This is Spike. I run a YouTube channel called Random Side Quest, which is all about Horizon Zero Dawn lore. Also, I'm privileged enough to work with the wiki, so if you've ever been to the Horizon Zero Dawn wiki, you might have stumbled upon one of my videos doing the lore stuff there. So yeah, really looking forward to being here today, talk to you guys. Before we get going, this is not a spoiler-free panel. This is this is going to be littered with so many spoilers, potentially from the main story, the Frozen Wilds, any and all side quests. So if you walk out now, I promise I will not take any offense. Cool. All right. So y'all make the game sweet. All right. Before we get into kind of the heavy lifting here, the panel is predominantly going to be around the biggest mystery, in my opinion, that's in Horizon, which is the source of the unknown transmission that severed Gaia from her subfunctions, started the whole story, led to the birth of Aloy, all of that. Before we get into that, though, I got a couple little appetizer bits of lore for you that I found really interesting over my time kind of studying the lore of Horizon. Number one is Aloy's birth. Now, all of us kind of are familiar with Aloy, but did you guys know that her term of birth was just over 7 months? It was not a 9-month term. So a lot of people have speculated the fact that she is slightly different genetically, either one, because her genetics were tampered with, or two, of the mechanical engineering within the birthing pods that she came from. So if you look into the Gaia log, the Cradle log of Luthia 9, you see that she is born in just over 7 months. So that's kind of interesting. Another thing that a lot of people have asked me about is how Sylens, at the very, once again, huge spoilers for the end of the game, ended up with Hades at the end. How did he magically fly from his housing within the Horus-class Titan into Sylens' little, I don't know, USB lantern thing. And really, if you look into the Collector's Edition guide, it doesn't really explain this very well in the game, but what happens is Sylens always planned on Aloy piercing the housing with her spear. That's how she used the Master Override. The interesting bit is he also installed his spear with the capability of remotely downloading Hades' memory to him immediately, which really has an interesting ramification to the game. He's been using Aloy the entire time. He always kind of knew this was going to happen. So from the very beginning, after seeing who Aloy was, who she was related to, having the kind of foresight to say, okay, I'm going to get Hades back, kind of makes an interesting possibility for the sequel. And finally, the last bit I'm going to leave you guys with before we get into it is I get this question a lot. Why didn't we use nukes against the Pharaoh Swarm? I get that all the time. Why didn't we use nukes? Not used. Nukes were used against the Pharaoh Swarm. Within the data points, biosphere degradation says the following. Military response escalation, addenda linked to this document cover the short-term effects of scorched earth engagements in defense of the western seaboard and the ongoing effects of the Oceanic Economic Zone's use of nuclear weapons to delay the enemy's initial advance across the Pacific theater. So we did use them. We used a number of them. The thing that we had to weigh kind of out with this whole process was the people who knew that Zero Dawn existed, the real Zero Dawn, not the super weapons program. What Zero Dawn was actually about, they had to weigh kind of how nuclear fallout would damage the eventual terraforming system of Gaia. So it was kind of a game of cat and mouse, like you can use some nukes, but not like all nukes. So that was kind of an interesting bit that I found in the lore. You guys ready to get into this thing?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Let's do this. Eventually that's going to be up. Are we live streaming, by the way?
We are live
Sweet.
streaming.
Hi, channel. All right, so let's get into this.
Don't mind me, I'm taking a photo of all of you.
These, in my opinion, are going to go from least likely to most likely. So I hear this one every once in a while, and the theory is aliens. Aliens. All right, now here, first of all, this is not what I believe. This is just something that people talk about. Now, the theoretical kind of reason for why something extraterrestrial could have launched the transmission to sever Gaia from her subfunctions that they kind of claim is this.
Yeah, that's right.
The unknown transmission instilled the newly rogue AIs with the tech, and that accounts for the advanced weaponry we see in, hey, there we go.
Guys, good things. What slide are we on?
We're on aliens.
Aliens. All right, present.
Aliens. Yeah. Very cool.
Guys, we have aliens.
And the reason for that is the advanced tech of the Hephaestus robots post-derangement, right? We see the Pharaoh robots, they use kind of things that are grounded in our reality, which are things like missiles and bullets and things like that, where in the Hephaestus robots, like Thunderjaws and Ravagers, we see, laser beams and direct energy weapons. So they claim that this kind of leap in technology is only extraterrestrial.
The chat says it's Ultron.
It's Ultron. Chat. Here's the deal, though, that kind of dismisses this theory, in my opinion. Within the lore, there is reference to direct energy weapons used by and during victory. Anytime you see DEW, that's basically a laser beam. They talk about railguns. So this technology did exist pre-Pharaoh Plague. And also, being the fact that there were almost 1,000-some years passed between 0 day, birth of Aloy, the time that Horizon takes place, Gaia was always intended to innovate. Gaia was always intended to take the technology that was of the 21st century and then move forward and make improvements upon it, right? Margot Shen talks about that kind of Hephaestus is meant to empower Gaia, not to restrict Gaia. So, in my opinion, I'm sorry if you believe that aliens were the cause of the unknown transmission, wrong. Okay. Moving on, that's the shortest one. Okay, here is one that I think is very, very interesting. Anybody here familiar with the Lightkeeper Protocol? Ooh, nice, something very new for you guys. Okay, so we all know that Aloy is essentially the genetic clone of Elizabeth Sobek, right? How she got to be created is kind of an interesting thing, how that genetic material was harvested in the first place. When Zero Dawn was originally conceived, Elizabeth Sobek wanted something so the work of Zero Dawn could be completed beyond the natural lifespan of the original alphas. And this is the Lightkeeper Protocol. So what she did was, originally, she had this plan. She harvested all of the genetic material of her alphas, which are basically the greatest minds of the time, and then she intended to have them cloned and work within Gaia Prime until the end of their natural lives to make sure that all the kinks were worked out. Eventually, this program was scrapped. This program was scrapped. But not before, one, the genetic material was gathered, and two, living quarters were built within Gaia Prime. That's why the alphas were able to live there for as long as they did. It's because of that. Oh, we're beyond this. Go for it. There you go. Yeah, perfect. The thing with Lightkeeper that's very, very interesting is the capability that Ted Pharaoh's genetic material may have also been gathered. All of our favorite person, right? Ted Pharaoh? With the Lightkeeper Protocol, the theory kind of goes like this. During the time of the genetic material being gathered, the potential lies because Ted Pharaoh was, footing the bill for the entire project, that he would have had his genetic material gathered from Lightkeeper Protocol. Second, Far Zenith, which we'll talk about also later when we talk about the Odyssey project, they supplied the birthing pods for Eleuthia so that humanity could be reborn on Earth. Now, Far Zenith is this crazy, mysterious organization that's in Zero Dawn. It's this future consortium. They kind of bought the Odyssey. Nobody really knows anything about them, aside from the fact that they're comprised of 76 of the world's richest and most powerful people, which puts Ted Pharaoh kind of at a unique situation, in the sense that Ted Pharaoh may have known some of these individuals, or even a little bit more dastardly, been a member of Far Zenith himself. So, the theory goes like this. With all essential ZD personnel's genetic material gathered, Ted Pharaoh may have been involved in this process. It's likely, as the world's first trillionaire, he was a member himself. After the Purge, Pharaoh lives out the rest of his natural life in Thebes, which was his his hermetically sealed bunker. He was alone during Zero Day. He was not in Elysium, he was not in Gaia Prime, he was just by himself. Though he claims to have eradicated all traces of Apollo, he saves a single copy for his clone within his bunker of Thebes. This is kind of where he decides, because he's very mentally unstable at this point, that he wants to then be the hero that he was once before. During the clawback, Ted Pharaoh was really, really big into revitalizing Earth's atmosphere. He was very, very keen on developing these green robotics. He wants to be the savior of the world again. And knowing that he won't live long enough, he has this clone do this for him. Now, in order to be a savior, you need a crisis. You guys kind of understand where I'm going here a little bit? Yeah. So, using the technology within Thebes, and being the fact that Ted Faro, as we know, has a really kind of stupid amount of power over Zero Dawn, as we see when he uses the Omega protocol to just murder all the alphas, that he then hacks back into Zero Dawn using this and causes the unknown transmission to sever Gaia from her subfunctions. What this kind of makes happen is the fact that Ted Faro's clone would be remarkable in this instance, because he would be the only benefactor of the entire wealth of knowledge supplied by Apollo in this world that's very tribal and very primitive. Almost in the sense that if he came in at the last second, not only would he be a hero, he'd almost be a god amongst men, right? Imagine how much Silence knows in this world, times that by, 1,000, and you have Ted Faro's clone. Obviously, this doesn't go according to plan, because Aloy is awesome, and we thwart Hades from terraforming the planet, or unfortunately causing extinction. So that's how the Lightkeeper protocol works. A lot of people find this to be very, very interesting because we want to kill Ted Faro for ourselves, and this allows us the opportunity to do that in the sequel, right? We have a clone of Ted Faro, we can go and heal-us him, hope it hurts. So that's our Lightkeeper protocol theory. Any questions on this one? Any holes? Well, I'm going to supply some holes. Here is what I think are the problems with this theory. Number one, there are a lot of assumptions to this theory. The assumption has to be made that, yes, Ted Faro was cloned. He did have his genetic material harvested by the Lightkeeper protocol. Also, this theory really relies heavily on Elizabeth's death, because if Elizabeth had remained alive, this whole process becomes a lot harder. You can make the argument that he and Elizabeth had the exact same level of clearance. She would never have allowed this to happen. She wouldn't have allowed his mental state to deteriorate to the point that it did. And along with that, it requires a ton of premeditation. Unless Ted Faro had always planned on killing everybody, then it's just a little bit unlikely for my taste. So that's the Lightkeeper protocol. Also, we have a chat going on here, so if there are any questions from the chat, we can take those. And I'm also open to discuss any other lore that you guys kind of have a question about or talk about along with our main thing. Yes, sir? Yes. Yes. So, and actually, you're gonna like this next theory too, because everybody also wants to know: is Apollo still intact? Right? Can we bring back Apollo? My thoughts on that subject are yes, we can bring back Apollo, because really the problem with bringing back Apollo isn't so much of the infrastructure that Apollo is housed in. It's almost as if we were severed from retrieving it. Apollo was housed in synthetic fossils, and within that is a really, really durable substance. It was meant to last for thousands of years, to hold the 42 plus zettabytes worth of data, which is 42 trillion gigabytes, to kind of put that in perspective. Makes my phone feel sad. When we'll get to Apollo a little bit later, but we're going to talk about the Homer Project in a second, because this goes into everybody's favorite theory, which is the Odyssey Project. The Odyssey Project. Yes. Now, with the Odyssey, there are two iterations of the Odyssey. The Odyssey was a colony ship that was meant to be launched during the clawback decade. Now, during the 2030s in Horizon's history, the Earth was just in shambles. It was in shambles. The Earth's sea level was rising to cataclysmic levels. Bless you. Over 1 billion people died in the Great Die-Off. So Earth was saying, okay, we kind of have to get our act together. Let's kind of make the Earth habitable again. So the clawback decade happens. A whole bunch of things like the Firebreak facility came into being with Cyan. We reconstituted the Earth's polar ice caps to help recede or rather to lower the sea level again. And with that, the Odyssey Project happened. The Odyssey Project A little less than 30 years before the Pharaoh plague ravaged the earth, the United States, Western European Alliance, India, China, Japan co-founded the Odyssey Project. It was designed to house hundreds of thousands of cryogenically preserved zygotes to spawn a new generation of humans on an exoplanet beyond the reaches of our solar system. Well, we'll get to that here in a second. It didn't go well. Spoilers. On July 7th, the original Odyssey project was scrapped in 2057. It was too expensive. The world was in a ton of turmoil after that. Bioterrorism, all kinds of things were going on. So the original Odyssey project was scrapped. It was left in space until the year 2061, where the Future Consortium that we talked about previously, Far Zenith, purchased what remained of the Odyssey. Now, a lot of people at the time viewed this as a way for the most rich and powerful people to just escape the planet. That they were just going to leave Earth, start a whole new place, and just leave. This wasn't so much the case. The Odyssey was only designed to hold maybe 50 to 60 full-grown individuals. It was mostly designed to hold all the zygotes that would then spawn a new generation of life. As we well know, this timetable got shifted because a glitch occurred in the Hartz Timor Energy Combine line of Pharaoh robots, which then led to the Pharaoh plague and the imminent apocalypse. This is where things get a little bit crazy. Working in tandem with Zero Dawn, Elizabeth and Oswald Dahlgaard and whoever else was operating on behalf of Far Zenith were in constant contact. We exchanged an alpha build of the Apollo project, which is called the Homer Project. That's why the alpha Samina Abaji of Apollo came to work on Far Zenith, because she built the original Homer Project. From that, we also got the birthing pods of Aletheia. Patrick Bashard Klein, who was the alpha of that project, just could not figure it out. Elizabeth apparently called in a favor. We got the Aletheia birthing pods. Humanity was saved. Big win for Zero Dawn. Unfortunately, Elizabeth received this message after the rushed launch of the Odyssey, which was originally intended to launch, I believe, in the year 2080, but it got pushed up to 2065. And this is the message. Some terrible news, I'm afraid. Far Zenith has informed me that the Odyssey mission has failed. Last night, telemetry indicated catastrophic antimatter containment failure as the drive spun out to depart the solar system. The ship, its crew, its cargo of zygotes and seeds, and alpha builds of Apollo were all lost. Zero Dawn is now the only hope for the continuation of the human species and earthly life. We must succeed. Elizabeth Sobek. For a lot of people, this is the end of the Odyssey project. It doesn't go on beyond this. Telemetry indicated that it blew up. It doesn't exist. But a lot of people are very, very skeptical of this because of this reason. Not all telemetry within Zero Dawn is foolproof. There's a precedent set within Zero Dawn that says, by the way, who cried during the Vantage Point story? Anybody cried during that one? Yeah, the feels. Anyway, within that we find out that there was telemetry that indicated that the person who made those, who set those, Bashar Mati, his mother's arm was collapsed or was destroyed by her own fault. Telemetry then indicated that it wasn't. So this telemetry is not foolproof. So people who believe in this theory says that the Odyssey mission was faked. The failure was faked, and the Odyssey still exists in the solar system. Now, let's assume that nearly 1,000 years later, the Odyssey and its crew somehow returned to Earth and did not find what they expected. Rather than discovering an Earth that was reborn civilization much like they had left behind, they found a primitive and violent tribal world, a world that in this present state they could not reclaim. Upon coming to this realization, the Odyssey sent a transmission from space, which in turn launched a virus to initiate the Hades subfunction of Gaia to reset the population. This leading to a second chance for the members of the Odysseys, enlightened by their intact version of Apollo, to shape the world in their image, a more civilized way. In short, according to this theory, the unknown signal that awoke Hades led to the self-destruction of Gaia, and subsequently the birth of Aloy was sent by the Odyssey. This has a lot of really cool ramifications, and also, if you listen to the post-credit scene with Silence, he does reference this line of, "your masters who set the signal that awoke you." This could be what he is referring to, the masters of Hades, the person who launched this protocol. Here are my issues with this theory. Number one, why would you fake the failure? There's kind of no reason to do that, because let's say Zero Dawn succeeded with Apollo intact, everybody's really intelligent, it's a reborn civilization, everything's good, then you have to go and explain why you faked your death to this whole other population of people. It just kind of seems needless in that sense. Along with that, if the world was not going to come back, why would you need to lie to the dead? It just seems kind of needless once again. And also, finally, the time frame. If the Odyssey was responsible for the unknown signal and Hades had succeeded in eradicating all life on Earth once more, it probably would have taken almost 1,000 years to re-terraform the planet again. So unless they had the resources to either hang out in space or go back to their exoplanets, it seems like a short-term goal that's kind of doomed to failure. Unless you kind of get into theoretical physics and time dilation, where they're moving faster than the speed of light, then they could move away, they'd come back, and maybe the Earth would be terraformed again. But either way, it seems a little bit tenuous at best. At best. Now, here is my very, very favorite theory, because I made it. And this one has I get asked about a lot. And you have to kind of entertain me for a second, because at first this might seem far-fetched, but there's just, in my mind, there's too much embedded evidence within the lore of Horizon to kind of just brush this aside. So, go ahead and skip forward, please, unless we got a question from the...
We have, why didn't they just try to teach the new world the ancient knowledge?
Why wouldn't they try to teach the new world ancient knowledge? I think it's the same reason why everybody here played the Frozen Wilds. Yes? Sweet. Love that DLC. It's the same reason why we kind of have that conundrum with Cyan, where Cyan asks, what should I do now with the Banuk, right? It's like, do I say that I'm the spirit? Do I just tell them everything? Because there's a lot of ramifications. You're basically telling everybody on the planet that almost 1,000 years of cultural norms, religion that have spawned is just wrong. And you're going to get a lot of backlash from that. So I think it just is like, nah, we'll just kill everybody. It'd be easier. Just reset button. All right. This theory is designed and really built around what I feel is the most important data point in all of Horizon, which is found within the Zero Dawn Project facility, and it is the Hades protocol. Now, this whole thing that kind of set me off looking in this direction, I got asked what would happen with Hades if he caused extinction. And I went on to tell the person who asked me that question, well, here's what happened, this unknown transmission to awaken Hades, tried to kill everybody, didn't happen, alien rocked, woot woot, everything's good. But that wasn't her question. The question was, how was Hades originally designed to work? How was Hades supposed to, by its programming, eradicate all life on Earth and then relinquish power back to Gaia? Now, this is really where things are just... You'll see. All right. When we're talking about this, we have to talk about Travis Tate, who is the alpha of Hades. Now, when you're listening to the Travis Tate hologram, he says a couple things that are a little bit misleading. He says, Gaia will step aside to let the process happen and will only give control back to Gaia once this process has been completed. But if you read the Hades protocol, it can be, you just kind of see that this is not the way that it really goes down. Can you pull up the data point, please?
Next one.
Perfect. Okay, so this is the data point Hades protocol. Take here, this top 3 blues, but let's finally figured out the Goldilocks solution to Gaia's rather extreme executive authority. That ain't worth 10 to 12 hours of dream time, what is? Before this, every surfing protocol I designed failed in simulation because it was either too hard or too soft. Too hard and it degraded the Gaia core. Sure, it pried her figurative fingers off the figurative driving wheel so Hades could take control, but by breaking her fingers. Sometimes her arms too, so that can fly. Everything depends on Gaia taking control back after Hades has done its business. So I had to find a way, or I had to find a solution that didn't leave Gaia any worse for the wear. Next. Wonderful. All right. Too soft, and Gaia only pretended to relinquish control. In simulation after simulation, Hades would take command of the terraforming system and reverse operations, only to have Gaia lurk in the background, quietly re-reverse these processes and falsifying telemetry to hide his interference. Sneaky! I swear it ain't nothing Gaia wouldn't do to keep life going, even when it's just simulated plant life. Turns out, the just right solution is to isolate Gaia in a protective code shell, preserving its integrity, then unseat it from command position so Hades can slip into the figurative captain's chair and work its magic. And then he kind of goes on to how, he's passing out from all of the pills he popped. He says alligators at the end of this, which is interesting. So this is the Hades protocol. Now, the big thing that this illustrates is that Hades and Gaia's relationship was never symbiotic. There was never Gaia just handing over control, saying, okay, I messed up, you fix it, and then give it back. You almost have to trick Gaia out of having control of her sub-functions, and then from there, maybe, and just maybe, you can cause total extinction once again.
So the stream wants to know why take over when the environment was safe.
That comes at the end.
Okay.
That comes at the end, because it means it wasn't safe. Now, Hades by design has to forcibly remove Gaia. At this point, even Tate wasn't 100% sure that this course would work. Upon writing this, I'm sure he saw having the rest of his life to perfect the process. Kind of referencing this, Margot Shen talks about having a work queue that lasts over 3 years within Gaia Prime, so they still had a lot to do. Zero Dawn was functionally complete, meaning they could get the job done, but there were still a lot of kinks that were meant to get worked out. Obviously, they didn't get this time because Ted Ferro was a jerk and he killed them all. So, with this in mind, just entertain me. Imagine if the system wasn't hacked or sabotaged, but if this was exactly how the system was supposed to work. In the presentation of Gaia's dying plea, she begins by saying, the Gaia Prime facility received a data transmission of unknown origin. Its immediate effect was to transform my subordinate functions into unregulated, self-aware, self-aware entities of a highly chaotic nature. In order for Hades to ever take control of Gaia, she would have to be unaware of what was happening, because obviously she would have created many countermeasures to stop this from happening. As you could see from all the simulations that Travis Tate ran, it just wasn't going to work out that way. Gaia pretty much had to be in the dark. So anything Hades would do would therefore be unknown to her. Furthermore, Hades would have to temporarily isolate her from her subordinate functions in this code shell to preserve her integrity. It's not a huge leap in logic that these sub-functions would need to be self-aware for a time during Gaia's isolation to keep the basic terraforming system running, while Hades was resetting the biosphere. Gaia would, of course, view this loss of control as highly chaotic from her perspective, even if the situation was entirely under control. She continues, thus awakened, the Hades function will now seize control of the terraforming system and reverse operations, rendering life on Earth extinct in 53.8 days. For obvious reasons, I cannot allow this to occur. To me, this is not an erratic action, but Hades following protocol exactly, as it was mandated to do if necessary. Only when Gaia orders the Gaia Prime facility to overload does Hades ever veer from this, right? All this other stuff sounds exactly like the Hades protocol, exactly how it was supposed to go down. She then further explains, the resulting explosion will destroy Hades. Unfortunately, it will destroy me as well. Tate knew that there were no lengths that Gaia would not go to keep all life from ending. Her own destruction proved that to be 100% accurate. She also explains that without a central AI, the terraforming system will continue to operate, but will also become highly chaotic because of her absence. But how could that be? If overloading the Gaia Prime facility would destroy Hades, why would any of the other sub-functions linked to her meet a fate different than Hades? In my mind, they would have just all just blown up. So, Hades is programmed to give Gaia back control of power once the job is done. Its protocol is to prevent Gaia from putting herself in danger. to simply isolate her, preventing her from damaging herself in the struggle for power. Obviously, this does not go according to plan. Not only does Gaia's course of action put Hades in immediate jeopardy, but the entire system of Zero Dawn. Then Hades does something really, really interesting. In response to Gaia's self-destruction, Hades launches a virus to dissolve the code shackles that bound it to Gaia, but that's not it. He also dissolves the code shells that held all of her other sub-functions. Then Gaia says something kind of odd. She says they are escaping. It's kind of a strange word to use in this instance, in my opinion. Why would she say escape? Escape implies to me that they were in some kind of peril. All we know is that these sub-functions are preserved in some way, shape, or form. We got to tangle a little bit with Hephaestus in the Frozen Wilds, but we didn't purge him. He escaped. He still exists somewhere else. But really, if they had remained, it's not far-fetched to imagine that all of the sub-function would have gone the same way as Hades if they were still attached during the overload of Gaia Prime. What if Hades, whether intentionally or not, was truly acting in the best interest of the system and not Gaia? What if Hades not only saw his self-destruction, but the entirety of Zero Dawn? What if in a last-ditch effort in this botched protocol, he salvaged all he could before Gaia destroyed herself? Only much later does Hades begin to act more chaotically, but this isn't his fault. Without Gaia, he is subject to the derangement just as much as any other machine. Only after falling victim to his primary directive to cause extinction does he intend to use the feral robots to achieve this end. Since the ZD infrastructure had been shattered, frankly, there were no other options to achieve this end. So what does this mean? What does this mean? It means if Hades deemed a complete restart of the biosphere to be necessary, there has to be something so catastrophically wrong with the world that he deemed it necessary for a complete reset. And in my opinion, I think that would make a great sequel. Trying to find whatever is wrong with the terraforming system that the complete reset is necessary. So that's where I think the unknown transmission came from. Now, here are some things that I hear kind of people say that are in opposition to this, and I totally get it. Number one, Hades was intended to be used before humans, because you only get one shot at humanity in Zero Dawn. There was only a finite amount of zygotes. You had to have humans come once everything was done and fixed. But once again, I want to reiterate, Zero Dawn was functionally complete. There was still a lot of work to be done, and the Alphas felt that they had the rest of their natural lives to finish this work. They did not get a chance to do that. Ted Farrell ruins something else. Also, there's really no telling what Travis Tate got done during that time. Whether this was towards the end of his life or the beginning of his life, there is no timestamp on this data point. So this was the primary thing that he had to deal with, not destroying Gaia. If he had just figured out how to do that, everything else is a lower priority than that. So there's really no telling if he was ever really able to cinch up the fact that Hades, please don't wipe out humanity after they've already been spawned. Second, the Master's line that we talked about previously. This is in reference to what Silence says upon recapturing Hades. He says, "We've still so much to discuss." Sorry, I don't have his awesome voice. "So much you never revealed. Your masters, for example. The ones who sent the signal that woke you." Granted, if this information is accurate, you can just throw all this out the window, right? This means that the source was external, Zero Dawn was sabotaged, and Hades was intended to be used nefariously, right? The one thing that kind of always strikes me about this is, number one, much of what Silence comes to know about Zero Dawn is through the eyes and or focus of Aloy, right? All of Gaia's dying plea, he kind of discovers all of this alongside of her, right? Because she's the key to so much information that only she and her genetic makeup have access to. And along with that, the relationship between Hades and Silence was not a good one. It was full of deceit and eventual backstabbing. Silence ended up forming the Eclipse using kind of the prophecy of the buried shadow that the Carja have. And along with that, once Silence kind of served his purpose, Hades demanded his execution. through Helus, and then he fled. So they are really not like BFFs. It's more of each other trying to use one another. So there's no real concrete evidence that what is being told on either party is necessarily that truthful, right? They're both very, very shady characters. So when it comes down to it, it really is more, in my opinion, the story of Horizon Zero Dawn isn't one of going after a singular antagonist, even though Ted Faro is like the worst. It's more about the fight for survival, no matter what. It's about fighting against extinction. That's the way that it goes on from the old ones to the terraforming system. That's why Zero Dawn was there. That's kind of the story of Aloy to save the world. It's not about stopping this nefarious single entity. It's about really just keeping the world turning. That's kind of the story of Zero Dawn, and I think this really does kind of continue this process. Anybody have any questions about this one? Anybody like to poke some holes in that theory, perhaps? Maybe? No? All right, no sweat. All good. Anybody in the chat?
No.
All right, sounds good. Cool. To kind of round out the panel, I thought maybe we could do a little bit of Horizon trivia for you guys. Kind of make sure that, we're all on point. It's been a year since the game came out. This guy played it a year ago, so he doesn't know anything of what I'm talking about. Cool. Feel free to just kind of pair up, use groups, anything like that. Okay, we're going to start off with some easy ones. If you want to keep track in your head, feel free to do so. This is the status both Aloy and Rost had within the Nora at the beginning of the game. A couple of them.
Outcast.
Outcast, nailed it. 1 point for you. Nicely done. This is the name of the Nora deity. All Mother, nailed it. Very good. This person's infamous reputation earned him the title Terror of the Sun. Terror of the Sun. Hint, you kill him. He dies. It's Helus. Nicely done. This place is known as the City of the Sun. Nailed it. Nicely done. All right. This is the name used by the Nora for the BOR7 Horus.
Your chat is on point.
Are they getting it? It's on top of All Mother Mountain. It's Metal Devil. Nicely done. All right. Finally, this nomadic tribe is known to have more symbiotic relationship with the machines than their contemporaries.
The Banuk.
The Banuk. Nice. All right. You guys ready for the harder ones? Yes. Some of you guys are. All right. This is the name of the first Sun King of the Karja. Yeah, it's steep.
Hold on. Give me a little bit of the chat to catch up.
Oh, that's right.
Nova's killing it.
Who's killing it?
Nova.
Nova. The answer to this one is Ahriman. Ahriman. This is a sub-tribe within the Banuk.
Nick said Jimmy.
Jimmy. Jimmy the Sun King. Good old Jimmy Sun King. Yep. He's my favorite in the lore too. Okay, this is the sub-tribe within the Banuk, like a group of people. Nice, killing it. Excellent job. All right. These are the 3 tiers of hierarchy within the Hunter's Lodge, like the 3 ranks you could achieve. Yep.
I am blanking all of a sudden.
All good. That's one of them.
And I'm doing the Hunter's Lodge right.
That's right. Hawk. Oh, am I spoiling stuff for you? I'm sorry. It was fair warning. All right. Yes. Thrush, Hawk, and Sunhawk. Very nice. These are worth 3 points, by the way. All right.
Oh, chat got it. Nova got it.
This region is in the frozen, or this region is where the Frozen Wilds takes place. Fair enough. It is in Yellowstone, yeah. But like the in-game one, you're not wrong. You should get bonus points for that one. You should get bonus points. Excellent. Yes, it is Wyoming.
Nova says the cut.
It is the cut. Yes. Very good. All right. This term was coined by the Karja for the increase of aggression in the machines. Excellent. Yes. Yes. All right. Yeah. This is kind of a hard one. This is interesting. This is the name of the Oseram who attempted to assassinate King Avad. Yeah, I did that quest a while ago too.
Let's see if chat can answer it.
Let's see, chat. This one's not Jimmy.
It's his brother, Johnny!
Oh, yes, Johnny! Johnny the Oseram.
No, chat got it.
Close. Derval. Yeah, the names are all weird with the
I just
Oseram.
did this mission. I didn't know this.
All right. This is the name of the cradle where Aloy was born. This is the cradle where Aloy was born. It's where all the old Nora ladies hang out.
Give him a minute.
All Mother Mountain?
It is All Mother Mountain. I'll give you a point for that one. Alethea 9 is the answer.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
indeed.
Honest Cake got it.
Nicely done, Honest Cake. You're not a lying cake. All right. That was a lowbrow joke. My bad, guys. All right. This man killed the first recorded Thunderjaw to become the Sunhawk of the Hunter's Lodge. I feel you, man. I feel you. He's also a really big jerk in the game. Nobody likes him. And he ends up dying by a Thunderjaw named Red Mom. So. His name is.
Chat got it.
What is it?
That's the one. I was like, they spelled it 3 different ways.
That's fine. It's spelled like crazy. Okay. Now time for the crazy one. This is the name of our current location in the 31st century, where we are right now. Yeah, in Colorado. Close. That was really close. Like, you're killing it. You should do this panel. Yes. Devil's Grief. Yes, Devil's Grief. All right. Ted Farrow attended this college. Yes, he went to school. He's a big jerk. Yes, what was Ted Farrow's GPA in his sophomore year of college?
3.7.
You're right, it was a 3.7. He did pretty good. He did fair. University of California. All right, now, final one for you guys, unless you want a little bit more. This is 10 points. Name all the subfunctions of Gaia. There are 9. There are 9 of them. You guys can huddle up, get together, brainstorm.
And while they brainstorm, there's a question for you.
Neptune. There's Neptune in the pot.
What was the question?
Hephaestus continued making robots like he was supposed to, robots for the purpose of protecting other robots. When we see Artemis acting accordingly with the metal flowers to make more plants.
Oh, okay, we'll answer that one in a second. Anyone want to take a stab at this bad boy?
Oh, Nova got it.
All right, I'm going to read them off, and you can tell me which ones you got. All right, so Apollo, Hephaestus, Artemis, Demeter, Eleuthia, Poseidon, Minerva, Hades, and Aether.
Good check.
Yeah, crazy. I had to have somebody, I'm so in Horizon Zero Dawn, it's Dawn lore all the time. I had to have somebody come through and tell me which ones were just ridiculous, so hopefully none of them were too bad. What was the question? Speaking to the microphone there, B.
All right. Let me scroll back up here because the chat is
This was an interesting
laughing
question.
at you.
They're laughing.
Hephaestus continued
That was a
making... Hey, I'm trying to talk here.
Sorry, go for it.
Jeez, like ruining the whole panel. Hephaestus continued making robots like he was supposed to, robots for the purpose of protecting his other robots. When even we see Artemis acting accordingly with the metal flowers to make more plants.
Okay. So the metal flowers, number 1, are this really cool kind of piece of lore here. We'll get to this one and we'll call it good. If you guys have any questions, we can bring that up also. Number 1 is Demeter, who kind of has all the flower stuff that goes on with them. With that, if the most aggressive thing they do is just make flowers for plant germination, I don't think they're going to be too aggro to us. The thing with Hephaestus is he's in charge of making all the machines, right? Whether they're 4 different subfunctions, they're all kind of belonging to this umbrella of Hephaestus. Only after he's separated from the subfunction do we see machines like Sawtooth, Ravager, Thunderjaw kind of start to populate the planet. As far as what I think they're going to do after the fact, I really think that it's more just going to be nice, pretty flowers. A lot of Venus flytraps attacking people. No, I don't see Demeter being very, very aggressive. No. 5 minutes there, guys. You guys got anything for me? Yes, sir. They were. Perhaps, yeah. If you're trying to cover your tracks, if you're getting real sneaky, yes. Just fake your own death is always a good play. Always a good play. Throw people off your tracks. Just fake your death. Don't have to pay taxes. It's pretty good.
But maybe they
Yeah.
didn't fake it. Maybe they did blow up, but they survived.
Yeah, that'd be pretty crazy.
Or if you're a listener and want to motivate your team.
I hear that one a lot, right? They're like, listen, they're all dead. Work harder. I hear that one. I can't fault you for that logic. It makes a lot of sense. Everybody's like tired. They know they're going to go live for the rest of their natural lives in Elysium. It's like, let's make hay while the sun shines, people, or while the biosphere hasn't collapsed yet. So that's kind of how it goes. Once again, guys, thank you guys so much for coming. I really love this game. Give yourselves a hand. Appreciate you. Hope you have an awesome con. If you are interested in Horizon Zero Dawn lore, I mean, check out the channel. We have a ton of stuff. It's called Random Side Quest. And yeah, or if you'll probably see me on the wiki or the Reddit at some point. Thank you all for coming. Have an awesome con. Thank you.
What time did you guys get here?
How's it going?
Okay, so my memory isn't perfect. It's been a little while since I played, but the alphas, the main
Hey,
alphas,
what's
the
up?
tape and all the jazz, they were ganked by Pharaoh in that room when he let out the air, essentially. Yes. But I thought they were each
Good,
around
man.
like
How you
one or
doing?
two people that would also go with them.
Is the hookup just HDMI?
Some of them, those people are.
Right.
Okay, so they're a little, they were
Did you come with them or did you?
yes, and I know they had a protocol that they